Now, topic number 2. This time, this one I've been waiting for like 2 weeks to read this one.
Oh, he's been waiting for weeks.
Because as soon as I saw this headline, I just said this. This is what I wanted to say, okay? In case you've been living under a rock, Scream 7, the highest grossing Scream movie in the franchise, has just been greenlit for a Scream 8. And you know what Paramount said over the weekend? Paramount said they no longer give a fuck about Scream this weekend. They basically said, and I quote, "We no longer give a fuck after 7 movies to give a fuck about Scream, so we decided, who better than the lady that fucked up Buffy, the Zuckermans, to write this movie because in hopes that they'd fuck this one up too." Yeah, I'm not being facetious. I'm actually being serious. Like I said, literally, they gave the women who fucked up the Buffy show the rights to fuck up Scream. And I'm like, are you serious? This news comes after which saw Scream. All right, so bring it right here. Spyglass is developing the 8th installment of the franchise with Lily and Nora Zuckerman writing. The Zuckerman sisters, which serve showrunners for the hit series Poker Face. I've not seen that, so I can't comment. And then they also executive produce Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which, yeah, there goes right there. Suits, Fringe, and The Prodigal Son, which the news comes after Scream 7, which saw the franchise original scribe Kevin Williamson step behind the camera for the first time in the series, racked up over $200 million at the global box office. Its first Scream time has crossed over the milestone. In its 30-year experience, the sequel, which saw the return of Neve Campbell, also opened a franchise record. Co-financed and star Isabella May, Courtney Cox, Anna Kelp, Joel McHale, and Matthew Lillard. Now, the Zuckermans, who co-wrote the Buffy the Vampire Slayer New Sunnydale, yes, they wrote that. Yes, the Zuckermans, which that we literally just said that the Zuckermans, which co-wrote that, they're rep by the UTA. So
that sums everything up by now. Yeah,
these ladies, the ones that ruined Buffy, are basically going to ruin Scream now. All right. So Rob, you read the Buffy pilot, okay?
Oh my God, yeah.
What is this? Is this a great choice, or do you think, this,
Well, the first thing I would ask: have these two ladies written a pilot? Have they written a feature film that's been produced?
No, they worked on it as the writers and co-executive producers on other series like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Suits, and Prodigal Son.
I would say this. They've never written a feature film before. Here is a franchise that's coming off the most successful film in that franchise. The last person you want to hire is women that have never written a feature film before. Now here's the thing. What they have done is they have written on other people's work. So they're like, okay, there's the Scream paradigm or whatever. Kevin Williamson wrote and directed the last film in the franchise. He created that franchise with Wes Craven. And I would look at this. This is my problem with Hollywood. I don't know. I believe they're sisters. I don't know them. And I don't want to, I haven't interacted with them or work with them. But I did read that Buffy reboot script. And I've often said that the problem, I heard somebody say to me once, the real problem with Hollywood is that the people writing The Simpsons today are the people who grew up watching The Simpsons. Meaning that the people who, Matt Groening and his writing staff, these were very well-read, very intelligent people that were educated in politics and history and sociology. And Matt Groening went to a college I went to, the Evergreen State College. And his Life in Hell comic, all of those people had life experience. They'd already had, these girls grew up watching Buffy, but didn't understand what made Buffy the thing that they loved. They took superficial lessons from it, but didn't understand really why it worked. Why did they get hired to write Scream 8? Well, because they're cheap. Because somebody will hire them and give them a shot. After reading that Buffy script that they wrote, I would not, because they're not smart enough to write Buffy, and they certainly aren't smart enough to write Scream. Why? Because they never saw the very things that Buffy and Scream send it up. They haven't watched the slasher films of the late 70s and early 80s. They haven't seen those things. And they grew up watching Buffy, but they clearly didn't understand why Buffy worked. They look at Buffy and go, oh, here's my representation. I see who and what I am in that show. But what they don't understand is Buffy was written by a dude, created by a dude. Created by a dude who came at it from his perspective. Do you know what Buffy, and to be fair, there were great women that later came on, took up the mantle and wrote, unbelievable writers. But still working within a paradigm that was set up by Joss Whedon. The problem now is that these creators are at war with the very things that they are writing. And Kevin Williamson, a gay man, created the Scream franchise. And by reading, if what I got from Buffy, the Buffy new Sunnyvale, whatever the fuck you want to call it, those girls are not smart enough to write a Scream movie because they are not aware of the underpinnings of what made Scream and what made Buffy successful.
This is what my reaction to them, to the Scream, to them getting announced.
Come on, man, that's garbage.
I mean, here's the thing. I come out hard at fellow creatives, and a lot of people say to me, well, look, I would say the latest thing that I've done is my audio drama True Noir, which you can find at truenoir.co. It's on every Audible platform.
It is in the link in the description below if you want to click on it.
I would say to anybody, which I directed this, I produced it, I edited this. If you want to know what I think is great, I got an incredible screenwriter and an incredible novelist to write it based on this novel from 1983, award-winning. And if you look at my cast, impeccable. Emmy and Oscar nominees, unbelievable. If you're going to tell stories, you go and get the best people to collaborate with. The problem now is they don't do that. They're not looking for the best people. They're looking for who gets hired because of whatever. And we get, look, don't listen to me. We all know we have been served up shit for 12, 15 years. Somehow Palpatine returned.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Seriously. Hey, J.J. Abrams, good riddance. Go to New York. Bad Robot collapsed. You know why it collapsed? Because you ruined Star Wars and Star Trek. And Alex Kurtzman, who wrote your goddamn Star Trek movie in 2009, took over the franchise. And for 9 years, we have been served up substandard, brain-dead swill. Now,
I mean, he hasn't made another movie for like since The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, like, that's like what I'm saying. Like, he's had a television show that got scrapped.
I mean, he is producing that one little sci-fi movie with Ewan McGregor that's gonna be coming out.
The one they held for the end.
Yeah, but it was made. It was written and directed by the guy that made It Follows.
Yeah,
he was able to produce and get it made because why? He hitched his wagon to somebody who made something better than he ever could.
Yeah.
I just can't believe my thing, which we were going to include that as one of the topics, but we didn't because I'm like, that's just a company going under, really. I mean, is that really? I mean, it's J.J. Abrams, but I just say it's not newsworthy as much. Although, because that's like, it would just be us blaming him, like, well, if you didn't do this, if you would have, you know, but at the same time, it's like J.J. Abrams hasn't done nothing with his career since Star Wars: Rise of Skywalker, and it's like, dude. You could literally, even though that movie was not good, it made a bunch of money. You could literally have used that opportunity and say, hey, let's make something else.
The Force Awakens made $2 billion. Yeah. But you know what? Even though it made $2 billion, everyone looks at The Force Awakens and says, it's not very good.
That's fair.
It's not very good.
I've said that since day one, but people act like I'm crazy for
No,
I mean, even when that movie came out in theaters, I will say I was one of the people that really loved the film from that time when it came out. But then when the sequel, The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker came around, it went down the toilet. And even when I look back and I still liked it for what it was, but I just don't have the urge to rewatch the sequel trilogy again.
The problem, I think the problem with The Force Awakens, look, we all love Star Wars. Who doesn't want to see good Star Wars? I want to be in a Star Wars porn movie. I love Star Wars so much. But the real problem is that movie has no real story. If you think about it, is it about Rey? Well, then suddenly Harrison Ford shows up, and then you have a planet that's been turned into a Death Star, so it can't. The Death Star could move.
Yeah.
So you've now built a super weapon on a planet that can only fire in one direction.
Which I remember that one planet that they constructed that Star Killer base. If you play the Jedi Fallen Order game, that's where you go and find the Kyber crystals. Where the Jedi go and find the Kyber crystals on that planet.
Yeah, but a lot of times, like in video games, it's not continuity to the story.
Well, actually, it is canon to the story for Fallen Order.
The problem with video games, and this is what I call it's a curse, the curse of cutscene storytelling. Video games don't have to explain everything. They don't even have to be plausible. They just have to get you to the next gamer level. Whereas if you look at what they present to you, we're supposed to believe that a planet-based energy weapon can first drain a star to fire, so can it only do that once? And if that's the case, not a very effective weapon. And then it's built on the equator of the planet, so it can only go whichever direction. And then when it fires, it's supposed to go through hyperspace. It's not like when you fire an energy weapon, there's a space-time distortion created. And then we actually watch a weapon fire and it changes. It's a beam weapon that changes direction and breaks into 5 different pieces, but it has to go through. The speed of light is a universal constant. In Star Wars, they make a big point to say, traveling through hyperspace ain't like dusting crops, boy. We could bounce too close to a supernova and that would end your trip real quick, wouldn't it?
Traveling through hyperspace ain't like dusting crops, boy. Without precise calculations, we'd fly right through a star or bounce too close to a supernova and that'd end your trip real quick, wouldn't it?
You have to do calculations. That movie tells us that a beam weapon is supposed to fire and it goes through hyperspace. How is that possible?
They're like, no, just go with it. Suspend your disbelief. It doesn't matter.
This is why they are terrible writers. You need to make us believe. Nobody ever looked at the Death Star in Star Wars and said, that could never happen. As soon as you understand that it's a space station, and Ben Kenobi says, that's no moon. It's a space station.
That's no moon. It's a space station.
It's too big to be a space station.
You believe it. And Star Wars makes you believe it because it has to move into position before it can fire at Yavin 4. It has to cross Yavin. They didn't do any of that. They figured J.J. Abrams was like, nobody needs to know that. And you're like, no, they do, because Star Wars already established this in that movie called, Star Wars.
Oh, you remember Lightspeed skipping? I was like, what the fuck?
What are you doing?
Lightspeed skipping. How do you know how to do that?
Dude, the worst. That was so terrible. I'm like, you can't come out of hyperspace in the gravity well of a planet. Your ship would be destroyed because traveling through hyperspace ain't like dusting crops, boy. They explained it all.
Yeah,
and
they explained it all from the first
like,
movie.
nah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, because in his mind, because with the Star Wars of franchise is way heavily on fantasy, and there's elements of science fiction, but it's not going to get heavily explained that much. But at least when you're doing your homework on the lore of Star Wars, stay true to your logic in the world of Star Wars. Whether it's realistic or not, stay true to it and abide by it. And don't just try to create your own little fucking fan fiction and be like, oh, wouldn't that be cool if we did this shit? Really? Well, awesome.
Look, he did the same thing with Star Trek. Like, he just ruined, like, the Enterprise is... Why would anyone build a... Look, Star Trek's my favorite thing in the world. But why would you build a starship that looked like the Enterprise inside or on the on the surface of a planet with a gravity well. The whole point of a Constitution-class starship is it's constructed in orbit. Because if you went down, why would you have little warp nacelles being held up by pylons? If you had to be on the surface of a planet, it would collapse. The gravity of the planet it wouldn't work. And if you, which by the way was established in Star Trek lore from throughout the series, but J.J. Abrams just wanted Kirk to just roll up in a motorcycle in the 23rd century and look at the Enterprise being built like it's the fucking Titanic at a shipyard in 1906. And you look at that and you're like, dude, have you ever watched Star Trek? And of course, as every interview he did in 2009 said, he goes, well, I never liked Star Trek. It was too intellectual for me. Then why the fuck are you directing a Star Trek movie?
I think because he said in interviews, like he says, well, Paramount, because I think Robert Oracle announced Kurtzman because they were Star Trek fans. They wanted to direct it, but then they said, we're not greenlight to first-time directors, and I think Abrams was the only one. They said, look, we'll greenlight it right now if you direct it. And he said, okay, fine.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. And you have a guy that, hey, let's blow up Romulus and Vulcan in the same movie. Let's not do that. Let's not do that.
I feel bad for saying this, but I actually enjoyed Star Trek 2009.
I'm guilty of it. I know it's not for everybody. It
was my introduction to Star Trek. Like, I will say this. I feel like the movie, like most Star Trek fans probably don't love the Abrams trilogy, but at least you have, it feels like they can go and watch the old series and say, hey, this is much cooler. Like, I would never have loved Star Trek until I saw the Abrams films because those were my introduction to it because I was a young kid when those movies came out.
Sure.
But then when I see those, because I feel like it's an easier to bring a new generation in, but then you can go back and watch and enjoy the original stuff, like Star Wars.
My first introduction to Star Trek, my uncle showed it to me years ago. Was the Star Trek: The Next Generation with Patrick Stewart, Captain Picard. That was my first introduction, and was the series itself. And then I watched a little bit of some of the episodes of the original series, and that was my introduction for Star Trek. And when I found out they were rebooting, I was like, oh, cool. Now you're going to bring in a new audience and make it a little bit more action-packed. When you saw that trailer, I was like, oh, awesome. And I'm not going to lie, I enjoy those movies, and I understand it's not going to be for everybody, but I think the idea, what the studio wanted to do, they wanted to lean into the new generation of people who have never watched Star Trek. And because the franchise, it was kind of dying, and it was dying down with the IP, and they had to bring that back and make it more relevant so that fans can actually be compelled to watch the shows.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you think those three movies, in terms of their position in pop culture today, do they have any relevance or do they matter?
Not really, no.
I will say one thing.
But let me ask you this. Let me follow that up. Why do you think that is?
I will say it did do one thing where it says, hey, if something is old, then just redo it. Like Halloween, kind of like Halloween 2010 kind of took the idea from the Star Trek where it's like, hey, why don't we just do like Star Trek and then just hit the reset button on it?
But here's the thing. I would say this. All stories essentially work the same. And at the end of the day, the stories that resonate are the stories that have the most truthful characters for the audience to identify with. And I think the problem with Star Trek 09 is everyone is a caricature based on they're looking at the original Star Trek, and they Carl Urban was great as Dr. McCoy, but he's playing Dr. McCoy as a caricature of Dr. McCoy, not actually Dr. McCoy. And the thing is, that's happened with all of our franchises. Like the interesting thing to me about Star Wars: The Force Awakens is, how do you make a movie where Han Solo doesn't know where the Millennium Falcon is? Which he doesn't. It's been sitting on Jakku for years. And I would say I don't believe that. I don't believe that Harrison Ford as Han Solo would ever be parted with the Millennium Falcon for any length of time.
He's too attached to it.
But the thing is, do you think he's dumb enough to let the Millennium Falcon disappear?
No.
That he doesn't have LoJack or he doesn't have an Apple tag to find out where that fucking starship is? And yet the movie asks you... Well, yeah, but that's the problem. And when they make these movies, like in Rise of Skywalker, you have a thing that's supposed to show you the wreckage of the Death Star that's in the ocean on a planet, not exactly the most stable environment, and you're supposed to believe that this thing, this Wayfinder, is going to send you. It's video game storytelling.
Yeah,
It felt like he watched Uncharted. Watch the video game cutscene from that.
It's just terrible storytelling.
Yeah, it's kind of sloppy writing.
I will say before we move on to the next topic, Ryan, do you have anything to say about the story for the writers for Scream 8?
I was just gonna say that just based on a lack of experience, I don't see this going well, but you guys have articulated that just about as well as I ever could, because as we mentioned, these screenwriters have done pretty much nothing other than this Scream 7 that's out, and even though it's very financially successful, it's also kind of divisive. So I guess it remains to be seen, but at the same time, it's that lack of experience that's like, I feel I get the sour belches about this.
Okay.
I will say, for my 2 cents in this, that I really don't care who's writing the next Scream, because for me, I thought that as all due respect to Kevin Williamson, I appreciate what he did because I liked every Scream movie. And even though he hasn't written all of them, I still like them. But Scream 7 to me kind of really dropped the ball to me. It had bad writing. There was many problems of rewrites on set, and you can totally tell when you watch that film as it went along.
Campia still has the funniest rant on that movie.
Yeah, that was like, holy shit.
John Campia, I remember you were sitting there. He was like, I'd rather jerk off with wallpaper, and you're like, wow.
He's like, I could write a better Scream movie. I was like, oh, damn.
I still think that is the funniest rant ever.
It was hilarious. It was hilarious. It was priceless rant. I loved it.
But yeah, that's the topic. But the question, of course, is for everyone in the comments. Do you think Scream is the 7th the worst one? Do you think them coming and writing in this new film because of Poker Face, they think, oh, that's a great idea? Or do you think, hey, just they wrote something bad, they could write something good? Or do you think this is doom and gloom? Is it doom or is it gloom? Let us know in the comments and leave us your thoughts below.